welcome to the Natural Healing Reel. I am your host, Jacquie Capstick, and today I have an amazing woman, Amy Rose, and she is an entrepreneur. She is an elegant woman who is here to share her life story and her journey with us so that we can see that it can be done, and to dream and to journey and to travel abroad, and the little secrets and know-hows. So let me introduce you to my guest, Amy.
Great to be here today. I've been looking forward to this, so I think we're just going to have a ball.
Oh yeah, me too. So Amy, tell me, let's start with a little bit of your bio so that we kind of get like a little synopsis of who you are. You're an award-winning author, which you've got many books on Amazon, #1 bestsellers. You are an entrepreneur, you're a mom, you're a traveler, you're a leader, and I want to hear all about it. So start kind of from the beginning so we can get a good synopsis of you.
All right. Well, my mother had me in Topeka, Kansas, but we're not going to go back that far. No, not going to go. I have been an entrepreneur literally since grade school, and some people have laughed. My first gig, my brother taught me how to pick up night crawlers. And for those of you who don't fish, they're those really long, fat, thick worms that you put on a bobber. And I collected night crawlers out of our yard, put them in little containers with my red wagon. I took that down and I sold them at the bait shop for 65 cents a dozen. And I was the richest kid in the neighborhood. So I didn't know that my entrepreneur journey was starting then, but I went out, and I would say really since about 1991 is when I leapt. And I've had different businesses, different things that I have done. So I have bought businesses, I've bought other people's, I've sold, and that's kind of brought me where I am today. I excel when it comes to dealing with money. I do have my chartered financial consultant credentials. I'm an author, I'm a facilitator. I enjoy teaching classes. I enjoy, my kids call me the wizard, and I've decided to start sharing that. And the reason they call me the wizard is because I can create something out of nothing on demand from thin air. And it is a very valuable skill when you're an entrepreneur, because often you have to work with what you have, or that's your starting place, to be able to launch and envision where you want to go. And so that's kind of and I'm an author. I'm just like you. I mean, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a grandma.
Yeah.
I'm like, I juggle.
I love it. And I love wizards.
Yes,
my sister had the most incredible little wizard when I was a child, and it looked like Merlin, and I've always had this soft spot for wizards. So let's stay with that. I love that they've named you that.
To give an example from 2 days ago, just a real quick one, because we're all in this together, ladies. And we joked about, and I told my friend, see, all those hours I watched MacGyver and Survivor Man and everything else has paid off. She dropped her very significant wedding ring down through the slats on a cabana that she and I were taking a couple hours off, and she's falling apart. My husband's going to kill me. I'm like, no, we got this. We're on a beach in a cabana. Your ring's under it. We can't lift it. We got this. And she is not doing well. And I'm looking around, and I grab my hat and she goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm ripping my hat apart. She said, why? I said, it's got a wire in it. She said, you're going to kill your hat. I said, I'll sew it when I get back home. And I took the wire, bent it, put down with my fanny in the air, and with it and one eyeball. And I found it, made the little hook, hooked it out of the sand, brought it carefully up and handed it to her. And she said, I don't know how you did that. And I said, I'm the wizard.
She says, I love you. I love that.
You can do these things too in your business, where sometimes you may not do it like someone else. We could have dug all the sand by hand out. We could have taken it apart. I mean, in your business, it's the very same thing. And in your life, when you're dealing with your family, sometimes you have to be the creative thinker. And you've got to think of a solution quickly that is viable with what you've got to work with, and you can still be successful. So don't always get hung up on, I can't do this because I don't have X. Many times you have what you need. You're just not going to use it the way someone else may.
Yes. Yes. Being creative, right? Just how, show me another way, right?
Yeah.
That's great. So your latest book, I believe, Pack Faith First and Then Your Suitcase. What a great title. Like, I'm on my way. So let's talk about that.
It was a true blessing. A little over 10 years ago, my husband and I literally sold everything except for 5 little pallets, and that included my office. And we couldn't get rid of all the kid stuff. And we moved with my husband, our 4 children, and the family dog from the middle of the states, Topeka, Kansas, very much the middle. And then we moved to St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands, where we knew no one. We didn't have any jobs. I had my work, but we did a complete life do-over. And many people have asked questions throughout the years, and there's been some pretty amazing things to me that have happened. And so last winter, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I went ahead and put it together in a book. And so it chronicles our journey and some of the crazy things that can happen, because this really is a life do-over that we have done. And the background that you folks are seeing is very much representative of one of the blessings that I get, and that's to see the beautiful, water and sky, and we live indoors, outdoors. So it is a story of a total life do-over. And most people don't have that opportunity.
No, or guts.
Don't go for it.
They don't have the guts. That's right. Yeah.
And we like a safe road. Many of us, I grew up around my family. I didn't move out of the area. We worked in the community. We took the safe road. I'll call it the safe road, where you have familiar things around you. Well, do you know the safe road doesn't always work? We closed a second generation family business after 27 years and winning a Small Business of the Year award 2 years before. The world changed, economy changed. The best thing to do was to shut the doors. So, sometimes the safe path may be great, but that may not be your path to success. Don't be afraid to, again, try something different. This was very different, but people have teased us about, you escaped. You really did it. And we made a decision that when we let go of everything to come here, that we were all in. If it worked, we were all in. If we decided that it was a mistake, we were all in, and we would never regret trying. And we could always go back to something else or somewhere else, because we had just proven that we have moved from the middle of the US to the Virgin Islands. And so we could do this.
Had you been to the Virgin Islands prior to that?
The funny thing is, we moved on St. Croix, and I had never stepped foot on it until I came and did a real quick scouting mission, because we had to have housing and we couldn't land with nothing. Not with 6 people. By myself, I'd have been fine. But I had to do a little bit of scouting. We had stopped on St. Thomas once on a cruise ship. So really nothing here.
Now, how old is your children? Like, how old are they when you moved? Like, you've been there 10 years. So how old were they when you moved?
Oh, let me see. 20, she would have been 10. The youngest would have been 10. And I think the oldest would have been 15, 16. I have to think about their birthdays. So, and that was 4 of our children. We had 2 older children, and in our family, the way it worked out, God kind of laughed. It's almost like having 3 families. When my husband and I married, we had our oldest boy, Cameron, who was 2. And then we lost a child right after birth. Then we had Trevor, and I think that was 12 years, something like that. And then we had Stetson, that was a 9-year gap. And then we had Monaco, Lexi, and Savannah, bam, bam, bam. So we ended up having 6 children, but they really kind of were in 3 different segments over a 20-year period. So it looks pretty funny when you're 20 years old and you're kind of in college and your mother is very pregnant. It is not what most college students have.
Right. Yeah. And how did they all adapt? Like did they love it there? Did they struggle because they would have had friends that's kind of coming in teenage years there, right? I've got an 11, 12-year-old and a 14-year-old right now. So I'm thinking, we're talking about maybe doing like a big catamaran and going sailing for a year.
Yeah.
Which,
I think it depends on the child. We lived in the Midwest, and my son, when we were really, all this happened very quickly. In about 6 months, everything was gone and we were moving. But he came in one day and we were, maybe a month or so out from going, and he came in, he is cold. He says, "There's no snow in the Virgin Islands." No. "Will I ever have to wait for a bus in the snow again?" I went, because we lived in a rural area. I said, "No." He goes, "I'm in." And that was
I'm with him.
the girls, we had a little bit of struggles and coming on island and what are some activities, but we got hooked up with the church right away. They were always kind of introverts and didn't want tons of people around, but we hooked up with some good activities and they've made some lifelong friends. And as a result of moving on island, my oldest daughter, her name is Monaco, like Princess Grace of Monaco. And she hooked up with YWAM, which is Youth with a Mission. They have bases throughout the world. And through that, she ended up going out onto the mission field in Northern Ireland and Lebanon for about 3.5 years. So it really was a life do-over for the family, and that there are things that we have done as a family that would never have happened had we stayed where we were. And then it comes back to, was that part of her destiny that we needed to relocate for her to reach her destiny? And she's married now and expecting a little one and is living, stateside. But you never know until you go, folks, and you just don't know. And the life you're living now, if any of you would look back over your last 5 or 10 years, tell me that what your plans were are the way that it worked out. It just doesn't.
No. And if they are, then you're very bored. You're very bored.
You are. And Jackie, 5 years ago, did you think that you would be doing this show and you and I would be together, or was this something that came about later?
I actually came across, I went through lots of trauma and dark night of the soul night, just really struggling. And everybody went back to work after COVID. And of course, I'd 30 years finished hairdressing. I did some work for 5 years with my husband in film, but film had all changed going back with the COVID. So I didn't go back. So what am I doing? I'm midlife, menopause, I've got nothing. And so then that makes it even worse, right? So anyways, I watched, here, I've never even taken a selfie of myself, let alone a video, right? Like, so I signed up for this course. It just spoke to me, this London Reel, Brian Rose, and it was the middle of the night. And I didn't even tell my husband. I was just, down in the bottom bellows. And anyways, how that all transpired. And then of course it's called Broadcast Yourself was the name of the course. What part of it did I not pick up that I was going to be on camera? It's like, right. So, it's like, take a video of yourself now, post it all over your social media. And it's like, no, do that. And setting up websites, I didn't even have a selfie. I'd never taken a selfie. So there I'm at 2 o'clock in the morning trying to do. So you're right. I mean, I would never, ever, but my passion is what I'm doing. Like it's all I've ever spoke about, and it's all I've ever talked about. And, my friends, that I've grown up with for a lifetime, I'm always, talking about, the Wayne Dyer and that kind of stuff, right? Like the energy and lifting and, change your thoughts, change your destiny, all that stuff for a lifetime. So who knew? I would never, but it was a risk. It was a big risk. And it was to step out like that and walking through fear is all just made up in our head. And it's quite exhilarating because it's not real. Right. And so I think once I started to take a step because I had no time, and there's, 1,000 people on the course or whatever. Right. And it's like, this is what you're doing now, post it now. And here I'm like, well, your poor ego that's already tattered, right, is now even you're just stomped on it, right? And everybody's going to say something no matter what you do, right? And so then I learned, what they think is none of my business anyway. So, there's lots of really great things come out of walking through fear and doing something different than you ever would imagine yourself doing, right? So
I'm going to tag, if I may, on a couple of things you said. When we think about fear, do you know all fear is a mechanism to hold you back from proceeding ahead? It's that little voice that's, oh, you're not good enough. You're not going to look good on camera. You don't have anything to say those people want to hear. What? You don't have the time. Well, not all that is a voice that is holding you back, because you have all of those things. You have a lifetime of experience. You have compassion. You have a brilliance that is waiting to get out. And don't let that little nasty voice who doesn't have anything else to do than hold you back. Because if they can hold you back and you can't hear the voice of fear anymore, who have they got to talk to? They're bored.
You're so right. And then
don't give them that. And the other thing that fear does never ever have the ability to have, fear cannot align with your vision. Whatever your vision is, your vision may include having supportive people around you, or you may have to go out and find them, like you found them in the middle of the night. Vision is something that you have, but not everybody around you has. And fear can never align with your vision because it doesn't have any. So don't let that fear hold you and cripple you, because you've got what you need. And you know what? If you don't have what you need, you can learn it, or you can pay somebody to do it, and you can go ahead. And you don't have to be good at everything. And for those of you, I'm learning. I can throw words out to you that may or may not mean Kartra, Zapier, a funnel, copy, follow-up, segments, recording, sound quality. There's all of these things that maybe you didn't need to know yesterday. All right, you need to know. And if you can't do it, there's always somebody you can pay to do it, or you can get help to do it. And you don't have to be good at everything. And this will be good for some of your listeners and those who are paying attention. I'm going to ask you something, all of you. Now, somebody's going to be able to say yes, but most of you will say no. How many of you do your own dental surgery? I bet the answer is most of us say no. Well, if you had a problem, would you go get help to somebody who can already do dental surgery, or would you back up, go through all the schooling and all the training and set up the office and get all of the equipment and everything else so you could do your dental surgery, I don't know, 10 or 15 years from now? Or would you go get help and get it taken care of tomorrow, and so you can move ahead? Well, we don't always have to do our own dental surgery, and you don't have to always do whatever it is you need to do by yourself. And it's okay not to be good at everything.
We're not meant to be good at everything. And I've definitely learned that through this process, the social media and all of the different platforms, and trying to, to manage all of that is definitely not my forte. And so many of my friends are phenomenal at it. And it can be daunting because, right. But there are people which I have, an assistant now, his name is Denton. He helps set up my, my platforms and stuff. And he's amazing. And of course, my nanny, she is also helping me as well. I have like this team that I'm building to and we're all kind of good at something, right? And then coming together, we're going to build a really strong foundation of a force to help lift others. That's our vision, right? Is because everybody has something to share. And like you said, right, I 100% agree with you, right? We all have that voice, but it's not even real. It's a computer chip. It's the subconscious mind, right? And it's just data that's running its 50, 60,000 thoughts a day of how shitty we are. And it's not even true.
It's not accurate. And that's the even worse, is it's a liar.
It's a liar.
Yeah, I'll go back to that 5 years ago. If you go back to 5 years ago or 10 years ago or I can't do that. I can't. And look at all of the things you have been able to do. So we've proven it's a liar.
Yeah.
We've proven it just by your very being at any point in your life. You can prove that fear is a liar. Now, there are some things you should be afraid of, like, I personally would not handle a rattlesnake. I think that's good fear. But the fear that you can't do things, that's totally wrong. And it's just robbing you of a fabulous future. Don't give it that power.
You know what? It's such a big message. What the message that you're speaking about right now is so big, because it kills us. It kills us in our tracks, in our body, because it freezes us almost, right? Because we get paralyzed by the thoughts of, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough. And we all have it. We all have it. I mean, some people have the balls to walk through, like yourself, and some people haven't had the push, or they haven't had the opportunity to kind of go, okay, and jump out to say, okay, I'm doing it. But it's really that, right? Because we all don't want to be seen. We all don't want to be judged. We all don't want to be, that one where, oh, did you see so? And unfortunately, we live in a world of judgment, and it's all just their fear of you, right? You're pushing buttons of their fear, and yada yada. So yeah, just not looking at it, and looking forward, and not looking in what we think the story is, right? Because it's all just stories.
Yes, and something flashed my mind, and folks, I'm going to butcher it. I'm telling you now. But, it has been said that if you judge a fish by his ability to climb a tree, he'll think he's a failure for his entire life.
Yes. It's funny. I was having this conversation with my husband the other day. Somebody, you're having a struggle, or your child's having a struggle. And so what we tend to do is we tend to then say, this person is doing this. And what we're doing by doing that is you are then creating that as their problem, your judgment of that, because it's making you uncomfortable because they're not doing what you want them to do, like say your child, right? But by putting that judgment and looking upon them with those eyes of, they're doing this wrong, they're doing that wrong, they're not doing this, you're holding them there. You're toxically putting them in a position of, by viewing them through those eyes of your own, which is usually our own insecurities, right? But then you're putting that upon somebody else. And not only does it affect the person who's doing the judgment the most, which they don't believe, but you are also really damaging that person that you're sharing with. Everybody has a problem. It's such a toxic pool. So, I think there's such a big message there that whenever, we find ourselves looking outward, kind of saying, oh, well, she needs to, just stop yourself, because you're killing them. You're killing yourself, and you're killing them with your judgment, your negativity, because it's just a big cesspool, and you're not helping them. If you're, like looking at somebody and saying, well, she's not functioning properly, or she's, I had a lot of this going through my PTSD and ADD and all this trauma, right? And people want you to be a certain way. But what happens is when people are judging you and looking at you and down at you in a certain way, they actually create something around you that is an energy, almost like an energy lock. And it almost makes it feel like you are this person. You're not that person, right? You're their judgment, which is theirs putting on you. And I think it's a big issue, like a big toxic issue, actually, that needs to be, if we could just understand that, like when you're judging somebody, you're first of all killing yourself because you're holding the energy. And second of all, stop doing that to somebody. Because if you don't want them to be there by doing that to them, you're making them there. You're creating and manifesting that for them, right? So.
And these are things, folks, that you need to learn over a lifetime. But and you should all know, when Jackie and we started, we really did not have a big agenda here. But the only agenda that Jackie and I have is hopefully some of the things that we can share with you will make a difference, because we really just want to try to lift you up from wherever you are and help you go forward.
Well, yeah, because we're all the same, right? We're all one. We're all one. We're all struggling. We all have these strengths and weaknesses, and nobody's bigger or better than anybody else, even though, you know, some people seem to be up on their wagon a little higher some days, right?
We all have challenges, and we're not, you know, like popsicles where we all come out of the same mold. I've got different challenges than Jackie does, which is different than the viewers that we have. But it doesn't mean that your challenge isn't valid. It doesn't mean that you can't use that information and help someone else either. But
well, right. And I think that that's the biggest thing, is that when we do get adversity, right, those are the nuggets. We view them as these horrible, terrible things, but those are the nuggets that get us the gems, right? Because once we kind of move through the dirtiness and get busted out of that, it's like then all of a sudden there's this whole world of greatness, like yourself, you know, moving through and busting through and walking down a road that has not been traveled. And I mean, it's scary, but it's so rewarding. There's so many nuggets, golden nuggets, not just one, many that come out of that, right?
And I think there are many other applications because what I have done in business, which is different than what I have done in my personal life, you know, and in the community, whatever, you have an ability to have a different type of empathy and understanding where, you know, in a crowd, you may have the, well, why aren't they doing this? And Well, you've never been there, have you? Okay, well, that explains why you don't understand why maybe they're stuck there for a little while. So I think all of those things you can apply, and it makes a huge amount of difference, because you can understand at times from a difficulty because you experienced it in your own life, and you can help be a support to someone, or maybe give a few ideas, or hey, rah, you did that. You're making progress. You're making progress. It doesn't mean you have to hold them down to where they are, but sometimes people just need to know, you know, okay, you know, like a volunteer. Sometimes people need to know. In business, I closed a business, a second generation, 27-year-old business that won an award for being Small Business of the Year 2 years before. Wow. I understand what it feels like to close a business because it's the right decision. All right. I have bought other people's businesses and integrated them into my own. All right. I understand some of the challenges. You and I have had motherhood. You know, I don't care if you took care of other people's kids. I don't care if you babysit nieces, nephews, younger siblings. You know, when you become a parent, it's different. So we all have things that we can do because of some of the life experience that you can empathize, you can guide, and you can train. because you have been there. And are you going to know everything? No. But are you going to know a lot more? And I heard it said once, and it was so funny. You know, and this was a long time ago for me, but you know, when you went to kindergarten, man, somebody in 3rd grade or 6th grade looked like an absolute genius. You know, in a high schooler, oh my gosh, you know, they were so far beyond you. Well, do you know that I am a 6th grader to a 2nd grader? But in my, you know, in my adult world. But there are also people that I look at and they're like, wow, they are still in upper grade from I am, but I'm getting there. So every one of us has an opportunity to be, you know, a goal for somebody else, because maybe they're still being a 2nd grade and man, you're looking like a 6th grader or a high school to me right now. It's okay. Because, you know, like right now, Jacquie, as you're starting out, you may not have 10 years under your belt as being a podcaster.
Yeah.
But you are so far ahead of the person who is starting where you were a year or two, you know, back, that you have a lot you can give them. But then you're also getting filled up from people who have been doing this much longer, or maybe they're doing 3 shows a day and you're like, I don't know how in the world you're doing it. But we can all do that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And to want to do that, right? I think that there was a time where people didn't want to learn. You know what I mean? It's like the ego got so big that everybody was just like, I'm doing it, you know. But we're meant to be together. We're meant to work together. And I believe that we're meant to lift each other. You know, I really do. There's so much that comes from what you're saying, right? Like to give or to share whatever information that I have, you're then teaching and relearning it yourself, because anytime you share, then you're relearning that information for yourself. It's just the gift, it just keeps gift, right? So you've now made somebody else's day or moment like, oh, thanks, right? And then just for the fact if somebody had the compassion enough to care, to want to help or to share, like it's just such a, you know, this is what I believe is our journey, or my journey is, you know, just to that, right? But get out of the ego, get out of the separateness and who's bigger and who's better. We're all meant to collaborate. We're all meant to help each other and lift, I believe.
And I think sometimes people, and I'm not discounting the value of a degree or a designation, because I have some, I'm not discounting the value. But for many things, you have to go in and you have to receive continuing education in order to renew your credentials, or you will lose them. And the reason for that is because you are always in a state of learning and things change. And with that, like I said, some professional designations, if you do not get your required 20 or 40 hours of CE this year, you cannot be one next year. You'll have to go back to square one. And what do people do? Well, they make sure that they have got that additional continuing ed. But if you don't have a designation that requires it, you get to do it voluntarily. And I have always really leaned heavily on, I don't always care what you learn because there's a value to it. It's important that you learn because, do you know, Jacquie, if I took everything away from you, if I took your house, I took everything but the clothes on your back, and I gave you $50, I said, Jacquie, you're starting over. Do you know there's one thing that I cannot take away from you just short of removing your brain, and that is your knowledge that you have amassed up to the point that you lost it all. Nobody can ever take away your knowledge. So don't be afraid to try something, explore it. If you don't like it, fine, do something else. And again, you don't always have to do your own dental surgery. But no one, if you invest in knowledge, whether you invest with your time and money, or you just invest in time, or you invest because you paid for something and you aligned with someone else to help teach you, I don't think you ever waste money when you are building knowledge, because knowledge is something that 10 years, 20 years. Do you remember what I'll go back to kindergarten. Do you remember our kindergarten teacher and your parents taught you the colors and a little bit of basic math and how to spell your name? You know, those very, very beginning things. Nobody can take that away from you. Nobody.
Yeah. Well, and you know, the famous saying, knowledge is power.
It is.
It is. And then what? And then with action is manifestation. So let's touch base. I know that's kind of like a soft spot on wrapping up our show, but tell me about the loss of a baby and living your life through losing a child after birth. How does
It changes
looking
you.
back, tell me about that.
I joke about the dinosaur days, and you'll get a little bit of an idea of my age too when I say some of this. Went through a pregnancy, had a little bit of issues, and miscarried several times before, so very, very excited about this little one coming on. In 1984, technology with sonography and everything else was not what we have today. So I take that into account in my story. So understand that, you know, but kind of had an idea. I had low amniotic fluid, but that didn't necessarily mean anything because I was sick all the time. So keeping things down, I wasn't maybe as hydrated. So, you know, we weren't sure, but there was never any hint that something was terribly wrong, right? Where some young mothers or some mothers now will have, you know, will have negative news very early or at a pregnancy. That wasn't my journey. I went into labor 6 weeks early, ended up having a cesarean section. My son was born and he had some birth defects, but the biggest problem, and they didn't know until he was born, was that his lungs had not developed as much. And that was part of the reason that he didn't have as much amniotic fluid. Well, I was knocked out from a C-section because at that time, that's what they did. And when I came to is when they got to tell me that my son, who was a few hours old, was already gone.
Wow.
So and because they where I was living, it's, you know, it's like, how many layers can you put on it? Where I was living, because he was going to be preemie and they didn't have a ward, I had been rushed in an ambulance to a city an hour and a half away. So we had no family. I mean, it was just like, can you make this worse? Try. So it was devastating to my husband and I. We didn't know anybody who had lost children. So people didn't know what to say. People who had children can avoid you because they don't want to upset you, and you're kind of showing them what can happen. And so there were some very dark and difficult. And for myself, I had about a year of my life I don't remember.
Do you think you were in shock for the year?
I think I was just so in shock.
In shock.
I had the
I think shock lasts for a lot longer. Like, I always thought of shock as you're in shock.
Oh. Yeah.
I know for myself, I was in shock for months, but I didn't realize until you start to come to in bits.
Yeah. And not only that, but your body my body was telling me, you've had a baby. A baby. You know, your physical symptoms, you got to go back to the doctor for your regular checks. And there's all these fat pregnant women, and you're just kind of like, ooh, just get me out of here. They don't have a special waiting room for moms who have lost babies. They send you with them other women. So there was dealing with some of that. I did find an infant loss support group. That was really good for a period of time because there were other women that you were not alone. And our group was infant loss from late in pregnancy up to 1 year. So it really kind of, you know, was a different gamut. But we pulled women from 3 and 4 hours away because there was nobody in their community. So I found that to be helpful. But the other thing was that it changed things in that I really realized how precious life is, and that things that you expect don't always happen. The other thing that, it's been 37 years. The other thing that happens is, if I get emotional, y'all get it. Birthdays still happen with no one there. And if you had friends that were having children similar to the time you were, you watch them grow up and you say, oh, well, he would have been going to 7th grade now, or, you know, he might have been getting married by now. So it changes who you are, in my mind, of how you appreciate life. And even seeing other people with newborns, still it's like, wow, you are really blessed this year. And when I say it, I mean it, because they are. You know, not everybody. And it became one of my mantras that is kind of like a tribute of when I see somebody and say, well, that's a beautiful, this looks like a new model. Yes, you know, 2-3 weeks, you know, oh, it's my, you are so blessed, because, you know, not everybody's going to have a baby this year. And that is one of mine. You reach a different level of acceptance to where your heart is still tender, but you can hear your child's name, because chances are you named your child. I've only met a few people who have lost children who have not named their children, only a few. So when you hear your child's name, you don't go batshit crazy and fall on the floor, you know. Now you may do it in the car, or you may do it when you have a moment, but you can reach an acceptance level where you can still be a part. And you will then notice that it does occur. And you can reach out to some of those people, even if it's just to sit and listen. There were times when I would see an obituary and I felt led to, not always, but I felt led to send a card and just say, hey, you don't know me. I just want you to know you're not alone. You know, here's some things. I'll be praying for you. I promise you, you will have joy again. I promise you. And I met some wonderful families from that, because they were like lepers. Everybody, you know, want to stay away. Even in church, you know, it's like nobody knows what to do with you. When you lose a parent, other people can identify with that, and they can feel compassion. Oh, you've known this person. Many times with someone who has lost an infant, people think that, well, there was no real life there. So what are you grieving? You didn't know this person. Well, they did. You kind of planned what was going to happen at Christmas, and you know, so there is a different acceptance level that you can come to. But when each of our children were born after that, which was a struggle at times, and then God laughed and sent us 4, bam, bam, bam. There was a feeling of what an enormous miracle blessing that each one of them were. I think that it took me a long time to find joy, because what was good about anything? I had been told that you grow up, you get married, you have babies, they grow up. Well, that must all be a lie, because that didn't happen to me. And it wasn't because we didn't want the child. So I think a lot of the things that you're raised and you accept are going to happen, it rips the rug out from underneath you of how much of what I've been told isn't true. And this is a lie. And then saying, well, you shouldn't get pregnant right away because you should grieve and you should heal up. Well, what if you can't get pregnant right away? Or what if you can't afford to, because you are making monthly installments for a couple of years on the hospital bills that still have to be paid? Or, you know, I've known families that they were totally unprepared for this. And even the cost of a funeral, somebody had to step forward. Or they cremated the baby because it was the cheapest. You as an adult, new parent, those are the furthest things from what you think is going to happen to you. And sometimes it does. And one of the most painful ones that I saw was a young couple. And when I say young couple, 16, 17, I mean a really young couple. It was already pretty traumatic because you know the families were not happy about this. Nobody wanted to be grandma and grandpa. And they had, you know, it was just 16 and 17. It was hard. It was hard on them. They were going to school. This wasn't what they planned. And everything was fine. The pregnancy was fine. She's 17 years old. She goes in for her doctor's appointment and the baby has no heartbeat. So at 17 years old, after all of this other stuff and trying to figure out and everything else, she gets to go into labor and have a baby. And she's 17 years old. She's a brand new mom. Her body is telling her she's a mom and she's burying her baby in the ground. That wasn't what she had. That's not what any of the grandparents wanted. Really? No, they didn't want a baby at first, but this is not what anybody in the family wanted. So joy, oh, sometimes takes a very long time, but then you find it in different places and you realize it's out there. And it's not your whole life, but it's a part of your life. Some people, as a part of their life, deal with sexual abuse. Some of them deal with tragedy. Everybody will deal with something in your life that's really, really hard. But it doesn't mean that there's not going to be joy, there's not going to be life afterwards, and there aren't people around you that can't come alongside you and help you, but they may not be your family. They may be strangers because they understand. And if nobody in your family has ever lost a child, they don't understand and they're hurting for you. But there's also, aren't you over this yet? Aren't you over this yet? I don't think you have to get over anything yet. I know people who in kindergarten, somebody knocked their front teeth out and they're still not over being mad at that person. You know, you lost a part of your future.
Well, it's a part of yourself too, right? It's a part of your being, your energy, right? And who are you now? Right?
Yeah.
You're not the same person coming through.
They're never replaced. You can say, well, you can have another child. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. And it doesn't matter if you have 27 more children. That will never replace that child in your life, the dreams that you had before they ever were born, whatever happened there. And so it's not always a part, and I had shared this with Jackie before, this is not always a part professionally that I really talk about or do stuff, because again, even some of my family, it's an ugly chapter. It's ugly. We just, no. You know, I guess it would kind of be like if your Uncle George went to prison for robbing a bank. You just don't want to talk about that. We won't talk about that because it's not happy, but it's still part of your life.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing on that note, because I think that many people experience it, and it is such a, are you not over it yet? Because they don't get it. They don't understand. It's a lifer.
No, we're long, but we have just a minute. Can I just share one story, because there might be somebody. All right, now this is from the heart, folks. I said you still find the joy, but this was years later. When I say years later, oh, I don't know. 7 or 10 years later. We're talking years later. I had had another child at this point. Thank you. He was early too, but life went on. I was in a grocery store. I had a half a cart full of food. I'm going down this freezer aisle. This is a normal day in everybody's life. I came around the corner and there were these two women who were talking, and they were talking over a cart. And as I go by, there is a baby in it that is obviously a baby boy, and he's new. He's new, and they're just cooing over and talking in, and he is wrapped in a blue crocheted blanket that is in the shell stitch, and I would know that because I made one identical for my son. 10 years later, I am with the picture that I had had in my mind of wrapping my son in the blanket. You know, the pictures. And I'm looking at the picture now, but it's not my picture. I lost it. Left the cart, ran out of the store. They probably thought I was a mad woman and I was going to have to go shop there again, but I didn't care. All I wanted was outside because there was no air in the room. And it was just like the entire world had just exploded for me emotionally. Somehow I made it into my car, and I'm sitting there and I'm weeping. There are kind people. Gentleman knocked on my window. I didn't know who he was, older guy. Are you all right? No, I'm not. Why aren't you all right? I saw you run out of the store and you pushed me out of the way. I wasn't even aware. He said, you pushed me out of the way, and I looked at your face and I knew you needed help. Man just sat there with me, talked to me. Great gentleman. And he left. My tears are because a stranger 10 years later in a parking lot took care of me.
Yeah.
So ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah.
when you lose somebody and something happens and it's 10 years later, you're not batshit crazy. It's because there's still a part of you that is human. Don't be afraid to be human because it's who you are, and you're not crazy. I wasn't crazy. I was sane. I was living a life, but you're going to have a moment. And my moment didn't happen for many years, but I've talked to other people. You're going to have a moment where it all just, it's inconvenient. It's messy, but it's okay. You're not crazy.
Oh man, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
I don't know who he is, but I never forgot that man.
I had an angel actually in St. Louis Hospital. I was coming down a ramp, and my one daughter was just had surgery, and lost my other daughter, and got a 3-month-old now, and then I'm just, as I'm videotaping my one daughter learning to walk again, I'm getting text messages that my sister, who's struggling with lung cancer, is not going to make it. They've cut her off. And I couldn't get out of the hospital. I got to the elevators, and of course it was a Saturday, and there's lineups, and I literally just lost it. I've got my wife, she's in a wheelchair, she can't walk, but I just started to bawl. And honest to goodness, this woman, she was an angel. She grabbed me and held me like a mama bear for 2 or 3 minutes, and until I dropped to my knees. And God knows where she came from. And I'll tell you what, she looked like my sister-in-law, who I didn't barely know, who flew out here from the East Coast to help me for a few nights before I had to fly to St. Louis for this life-changing surgery for my other daughter. And just all, and people are good.
Good.
Really good, right? But yes, and it's like an angel will appear almost. It was angelic, it's when you say that, it just reminds me of this lady. I don't know where she came from, but God bless her, because she held me for 3 minutes in the middle of this crazy busy place, doesn't know me, until I was able to, drop down beside my daughter in the wheelchair and get myself out of there. And
Get it together.
yeah, people are
That's right.
people are good. People can be shitty, but people are good.
And you were not crazy.
No, I've had a lot of that, a lot of name calling about that going on for some reason. Very unfortunate that people do that. Just judgment, right? Because people are uncomfortable because they're not happy that you are where you are. And it's unfortunate that they do that, but it happens. I know I'm not crazy, but it's not nice when people are pointing fingers and talking, oh, she's right. It's a very, very
get a hold of yourself. Why are you acting like, well, you judgmental witch? Why don't you just walk around the corner? But you have the strength to say it at that moment.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. When we know better, we do better. Is how I look at that, right?
But
they would have done better.
If you've lost a child, you're not alone. We don't pass out t-shirts for our clubs. You never see people wearing t-shirts that said, I am the mother of a dead child. Boy, can you imagine how they'd clear the room with that one?
Right.
But it becomes part of you, and it becomes part of your family history. But you can find the joy.
Yeah.
Your life will go on. But again, you now have the capacity to reach out to someone else, and you can recognize things that before might have made you uncomfortable. But I think now, if I saw somebody collapse with 2 kids and beside a wheelchair and whatever was a melting, I think I'd just walk right over, even if it was just to stand there with my hand on the shoulder until they were ready to speak, to let them know you're not alone. And they may tell you to go to hell away, or they may say, oh, hopefully that they won't censor that out. Or you may just say, would you like me to just sit with you for a little bit? Can I call some, just be one human.
Be compassionate instead of judgmental.
Just be one human to one human.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be all that a person needs right then, is one human.
That's right. That's right. Amy, you're a wonderful, wonderful woman. I'd like to know more about the Virgin Islands and how I come to visit there. Is it easy to get there?
It is. Just about anywhere. You can jump on a plane, and it's about a little over 3 hours from Miami. Okay. They have direct flights from Newark, some from Atlanta. It doesn't take long to get here. If you are watching us and you're in the U.S., it is part of the U.S. on the U.S. Virgin Islands. The British Virgin Islands are different. We can see them, but they're close to us. So you do not need a passport. Right now, if you are watching this and we're still dealing with some of the COVID issues, there's a travel portal in that you have to go in, so you have to have a negative test before you come in. But you can come down here. You'll love this. We speak the English language. We use U.S. currency. We have U.S. laws, all of those things. It's a part of school that when I thought back when we first started coming here, the only thing I could remember about St. Croix being taught in school was that Christopher Columbus landed here and the Indians attacked him. I remembered that from school. And I've actually been there. It's called Salt River. But it is very laid back. When you see pictures of Hawaii and California, clear full of people, you come to St. Croix and it's empty. There probably is nobody on the beach.
Wow.
We're much smaller that way. And the scenes that you see in the back, that is very representative of what it looks like here. So laid back, very much a foodie paradise. They like to eat here a lot. Lots of live entertainment. When you go to St. Thomas is about a third as big as this island. Same number of people, very busy. That is where the cruise ships go. So St. Thomas has a different vibe, very close in. St. John is 75% national park that was gifted by the Rockefeller family. And so it is not developed. And St. John, if you look at any of the pictures, it always looks photoshopped, always. But that's exactly what it looks like.
It's that beautiful.
So if you came to the Virgin Islands and you only went to St. John, you would have one impression. If you went to St. Thomas, you'd have an impression, and St. Croix. So really all three of the islands have a very different flavor and a very different vibe. And between St. Thomas and St. John, you take a ferry that's just, 10 minutes loading and unloading. I mean, it's very close. And then we usually take a puddle jumper, which is a seaplane from St. Croix to St. Thomas, or you can do it from the airport, or they have ferries. So you can get around easy. It's a little expensive.
Explore. I'm ready. I've got the travel bug so bad, being stuck for so long.
All right. You like history? We have historic forts. The pirates used to hang out here, folks. They had the sugarcane industry. A lot of old buildings and things still remain here from the 1700s. We have some phenomenal old churches and things that have been around, a long time. The downtowns, but in the Caribbean, some people are surprised because they have trouble settling estates here because people leave, they can't find them. You can have $1 million mansion. Absolutely stunning, outstanding. And 2 doors down is this relic, hurricane damaged relic that's been sitting for 20 years that hasn't been settled. So if you're not used to that, you definitely can see it. If you have watched, what was it? Recently we were watching, I think it was The Outer Banks on Netflix. They were supposed to be in the Bahamas and they were doing an aerial, and my husband and I both laughed. Yeah, they really did film that somewhere in the Caribbean because we could see the nice houses and the relics. So that surprised some.
My kids are watching that show actually right now. Funny that you just said that. We were just speaking about that yesterday.
Yeah. When they were doing the Bahamas scene, and there was another scene that was on Netflix. I think it'll be coming back on. It was called Death in Paradise. Oh, we loved it. It was supposed to be this fictitious little island here in the Caribbean. I'll tell you, about half of it's true, and about half of it is TV. But it's fun to watch, and it would give you a good idea.
Okay. Sounds good.
Nice. And then when we joked about, for being such a small island, my gosh, their murder rate is huge. There's somebody dying every week.
Awesome. Love that. Jeez. Oh, well, Amy, it was wonderful to have this conversation, and I hope to catch up with you again down the road. I'm going to ask you to just whatever information you can give us that would be of benefit to us to allow me to post that with our video so that people can get in touch with you, and we know what to read and we know what to look at to get our finances and give ourselves a kick in the butt when we're feeling scared and not wanting to step out, because fear's not real. It's all just a story we've made up in our head.
And it's a liar because we've already proven that. And I'll think about some of the links, and for HSLDA, Khan Academy, and some of those other things as I think about them, I'll put those down too, because that might be helpful for somebody if they're not aware of them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think you're wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been an absolute joy.
Yeah, for me too.
It's been a good time for me today. A few tears here and there. I'm telling you, the heart's still
sharing
tender.
that, because it's the stuff that people don't want to share, or else when they share it, it just wants to be drama. But just sharing what's real and how to move through like it doesn't just finish. It's not a 6-month thing and you're done and you're on with your life. It's a lifer. It changes your DNA. It changes your being. It changes your energy. And it's a child, whether a child was with you in your belly or a child was with you for a lifetime. is your child. And it's an energy, it's a being, and it's a part of who you are. And it's uncomfortable for others who don't know, but for them to just know to not be uncomfortable and just to have compassion, just hold a space of love and not judge.
And sometimes, again, it kind of depends on the situation, but there were times when I would just send a card that I knew was going to arrive around a birthday or was going to arrive around a day that child had passed away, and just say, I just want you to know I haven't forgotten, and that I'm thinking of you today. And that, sometimes human to human, worth the world. No words have to be said.
That's right.
World.
Yeah. And that's the good stuff right there.
Yeah. It's all good stuff.
Yeah.
Some of it we just don't like the taste of.
It's true. It's true.
I don't like liver. I don't like liver.
I don't either.
I don't like
liver and onions. I could do without it.
Some people love liver. So I am told that liver tastes good. I don't personally agree, but it must taste good because somebody likes
people eat it. Enjoy your sunny day in the Virgin Islands, my love. And I hope to catch up with you again.